Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. Okay, I'm going to start straight off with a question. Let me ask you this. Have you ever poured your heart out to your partner and then they respond with something that totally misses the mark? Maybe you say something like, oh my God, this week has been exhausting. It is so full on. I'm so tired. And then they come in with something like, it's not a big deal. It's Friday. The week is over. And I think you should just get to bed earlier and it'll all be fine. And you're like, you're not listening, like you don't get it. So instead of feeling supported, you kind of feel dismissed. And then more often than not, who knows this, you end up fighting because you're not meeting each other emotionally. Okay, so there's actually a name for what is going on right there. It's called the meta-emotion mismatch. Whoa, that is a mouthful. It's the meta-emotion mismatch. And I'm going to be diving into it today because I think it is so fascinating. I talked to Alex about it when I discovered it. I was reading up about it and came across some research. And I was like, babe, do you know, have you ever heard of this concept or this idea? Does this make sense to you? Obviously, he didn't know the proper name, meta-emotion mismatch, but he got the gist of it and he was like, which ones do you think we are? And we actually had a really good conversation about it. It's actually a hidden relationship pattern that shows up all the time, but we don't even know how to name it. Well, now you do. So today I'm going to be talking about the meta-emotion mismatch and what it actually means. I'm going to be talking about why it's one of the biggest predictors of long-term relationship strain and stress. And then obviously how you and your partner can stop talking at each other or past each other and really start connecting in a way that feels safe, respectful, connected, and truly supportive. This is the kind of episode that might just shift the way you see your partner and then yourself too. It's gold. I'm really excited. Okay, so just before we jump in, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Stephanie Pinto and I'm the host of the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm also an award-winning emotional intelligence coach, a best-selling author, and an international speaker. Everything and anything to do with emotional intelligence, particularly for parents and educators, is my jam. I absolutely love it. I'm like a super nerd. We're in Sydney here. My husband, Alex, he's been on the podcast a few times and we have 2 kids. They are amazing, but man, they test us. I think all kids do. That's what they're here to do, basically. But we love it. Our house is filled with joy and connection and love and yes, big emotions, but we know how to handle them and we handle them confidently, and very rarely are we blindsided by our kids' behavior because we get this stuff. We've learned it and we now understand it. Definitely not experts, but man, we are totally different parents to what we were even 3-5 years ago, really. So that's why I'm such a huge champion. And obviously now I coach parents and educators on how to do this for themselves, but then how to be teaching it to kids. Because to be honest, I think emotional intelligence is an absolute non-negotiable. It's a critical skill. And I think our kids need it now and into the future. And I hate the term soft skill that is thrown around. I think, no, absolutely not. This is literally a life skill that you need to have. Also, before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation. They're the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record these episodes and these videos. I want to pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders, their ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, so let's dive in with what is a meta-emotion mismatch? This is basically how we feel about feelings. So it's how we feel about emotions, right? Because some people are all good with them. Other people are oh my God, I'm going to please don't talk about feelings to me. So everyone is different. I totally get that. So it's not just the emotion itself and how we feel in certain situations, right? When there's conflict or when we're feeling anxious, it's actually our reaction to our emotions. Our own emotions, but then emotions of others as well. There are 2 common styles, and this stuff comes from research. I'm going to mention the Gottman Institute. So John and Julie Gottman do a ton of research around relationships, marriages, parenting. They are amazing resources. Straight off the bat, I'll put some of their details in the show notes so you guys can access it. But they have found over decades of research 2 common styles. First one is possibly, maybe I'll go out on a limb and say that most of the people listening to this podcast most of you guys are probably going to be this first style. This is the emotion attuning style. Basically just means you value emotional expression, you value being heard, and you're okay somewhat to sit with feelings. The second type is emotion dismissing. So these people, they tend to prefer more logic, more action, like problem solving and moving on from emotions quickly because they are very uncomfortable. Let me say a huge disclaimer here. Both of these styles are valid. Neither one or the other is like right or wrong or better or worse. Obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages to both, but I don't want people thinking one style is like the best gold standard, like, because each are just different. So the thing is, when these two different styles meet in a relationship and they're not understood, that's actually the big part, then it can lead to a whole lot of friction. What's it? Okay, I think he's leaving a message. Let me see. Yeah, if the phone rings and I'm like out here or busy or something, people leave a voice mail. It's okay. Thanks. Close the door. Somehow I knew there would be a tiny human interruption today. Sorry about that, guys. Where were we? So I have scripted out, because I'm that nerdy, a real life example, but like not with real people. Okay. So two people, Maya and Dan, are in a relationship. Imagine Maya coming home from work. She drops her bag and says, "Oh my God, I just had the most exhausting meeting. Felt like no one took me seriously. I wanted to cry halfway through. It was awful." Then Dan, who's trying to be helpful, remember that, he's trying to be helpful, says something like, "Well, next time just speak up, be more confident, you know your stuff, own it." But then Maya feels like, hey, it's not just about what I said. I felt like really small in there. I felt invisible. But then Dan replies something like, "But you're not invisible. You're the team lead. They have to listen to you." I don't know about you, but I get the feeling that he's like, what's the problem? So what is actually happening here is that Maya is looking for connection and validation, and Dan is trying to offer logic and solutions. So you can see the mismatch, right? So neither of them feels like they're getting anywhere. Maya walks away and she's feeling like dismissed or misunderstood. And then Dan walks away feeling confused, like he was trying to help. This is kind of like the head versus the heart dynamic that's like happening in action. I don't know if any of you can resonate with this. I definitely can. So this is huge. Why this matters is because, as I said before, John and Julie Gottman have done decades of research on this pattern. These mismatches, like how we respond to emotions, can predict relationship outcomes with 80% accuracy. That is wild. So it's not about how many fights you have, or it's not even necessarily about what you fight about. It's how you respond when your partner is feeling upset or emotional or vulnerable. So you can kind of break it down into like the head and the heart. One partner is trying to process things through their heart and their feelings and emotions, and the other one is trying to kind of find some solutions and logic and respond with like fixing. And also sometimes I wonder in there a little bit of like, let's move past this. It's going to be okay. It's not a big deal. Like trying to kind of sweep the emotion aside. The problem is though that then the emotional partner is feeling brushed off or maybe alone. And then the logical partner feels unappreciated or misunderstood. And it creates this like loop where both people feel like they're speaking a different emotional language, because they kind of are. Okay, so let's talk about like, how do we fix this? If you're resonating with this and you're like, how do I, like, this is us, then here we go. This is for you. The good news is it is very fixable. I don't like the word fixable, but there's so much we can do to support ourselves and our partner and our relationship. The Gottmans have this really simple like roadmap or like a blueprint, and it helps couples move from this disconnect to connection. So they have 4 steps. First one is understanding. It's always understanding before you actually act. So before you try to help or fix anything, just listen and attune. It's kind of like plugging in. You can ask things like, do you want advice, or do you just want me to sit here with you? Or you could say, that sounds really hard. Do you want to talk about it more? Like, is now a good time to talk? Now, this is especially helpful for the like problem solver partner who genuinely wants to support the other person, but they just don't really know how. A really good tool for this is like the relationship check-in. Let me explain. If you can find just like 5 minutes to start off with to do a weekly check-in with your partner, it's like when you slow down and you talk and you connect emotionally before issues kind of build up. You can check in with them with how their week is going, if it's like partway through the week. If you choose to do this at the start of the week, you could be like, what's on for you this week? Like, how is it looking? Can I help with anything? Like, can I take some stress off? Like, can I take a load off you or help you out in any way? Or if you do it at the end of the week, you can kind of do a like in retrospect, almost like a check back. How was this week? How are you feeling? And sometimes I just like the question of like, is there anything I can do for you to take a load off your plate or to help you out? Or is there anything that you're stressing about or that's really hard for you? It probably goes without saying, but it's best to do this when you guys are calm and connected already, not in the middle of conflict. and best if you've been able to set a bit of time aside. So maybe it's like after the kids go to bed. The second step is to build like an emotional culture in your relationship. Remember, just to please start small, because Rome was not built in a day. What you want to do is kind of make emotions like safe in your relationship, not something to fear or avoid. This looks like when conflict or disagreements come up, naming your own emotions, like literally saying how you feel, as silly as that sounds, validating the other person's or your own emotions, empathizing with how someone feels, and then exploring or kind of brainstorming what might help. So if you're the more problem-solving logic kind of partner, what this will do is actually builds trust with your partner and also with your kids if you have them. And then if you're the more emotion-focused partner, try to see their practical or like solution-focused responses as love in disguise. I promise you, it is their way of trying to help. Pretty cool, huh? I love that. Love in disguise. Step 3, this is probably one of the more challenging or could be more of a difficult one. It is talking about your emotional upbringing. It doesn't have to be like this long monologue or like conversation with your partner. It could just be kind of opening up that topic in little bursts and little moments. It could be as simple as like, oh my gosh, I saw this thing the other day, and if that was me as a kid, I would have copped it. I don't know, everyone is different, but this can be a huge game changer. If you think about, were emotions welcomed or shut down in your home growing up? And what about in their home growing up? Maybe one of you or both of you were told to toughen up. Maybe one of you was encouraged to cry and let it out. But like, did your family even talk about emotions at all? These are things that kind of we need to know. And I think it builds so much empathy and compassion and like patience and understanding when we know this about our partner. Because understanding their emotional blueprint really helps you to, number 1, stop taking things personally. And number 2, start building up empathy, like I was saying. And if you find that this is kind of going to be more difficult for your partner, maybe easier for you because you are surrounded by stuff like this, talking about emotions, and you're listening to podcasts like this one, then maybe keep this quote in mind. Be the example and the invitation, and that's all. They're not my words. They are from the beautiful Jackie Black, who we had on the podcast probably a couple of months ago now. Be the example and the invitation, and that's it. You cannot force someone to do things your way, but you can be the example, you can model, you can show up how you want to act and behave and speak, and you can invite them. Okay, the 4th step is practice attunement and connection. So this might look like building little rituals of like emotional intimacy. Could be as simple as a daily check-in. Doesn't have to be like super deep. What do you have on today? How can I help? That kind of thing. Maybe even a conversation that's like, what can I do to remove some stress from you this week? Also, a little check-in when the kids are in bed. They just have to be these tiny little practices. What they do is help you stay on the same page emotionally before the conflict builds up and then explodes. So if you start to do this, or even just like take one of these ideas that I've been talking about on the episode today, what will happen is instead of like spiraling into disconnection and conflict, your conversations will actually start sounding a little bit more like, oh, that sounds really tough. Do you want to talk about it? Or I can tell you've had a rough day. Do you want to vent? Or do you want to find some solutions? Maybe even just, I'm here. What do you need? I love that one, actually. Or saying something like, you know what? You don't need to fix anything right now. I just want to let this out. This is the shift that will take you from emotional clashing to emotional connection. Give it a go, please. This could be the one thing that really starts to make some change in your relationship. Okay, so let's do some final thoughts and some takeaways. One of you might lead with the head and the other might lead with the heart, and that's okay. But when you learn to understand each other's emotional style, you stop talking at each other and you actually start showing up for each other. And that feels really good. I want to say, like, don't wait for the other person to be what you need. You might need to tell them, and more than once. Be patient and listen, and maybe can you adjust rather than expecting them to change everything about themselves. And also, it's okay if not. Like, just be prepared for maybe some difficult moments, and maybe sometimes even some breakdowns are needed. I don't know. So here's a good final reminder. You don't have to match, but you do have to meet. Okay, that's it. I would love to know if you're more head or more heart. You can comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send us a message or an email if you're just listening along to the podcast. I really want you to think about how this shows up in your relationship. It can be such a game changer. And for me, it's already helped me to take people's behavior a lot less personally and to understand that everyone is wired differently. And most of the time, we're all just trying to help. So if you want to go deeper and learn more about how to do this in your own relationships and in your own home, whether it's your partner or maybe your kids, I am here for you. This is the stuff that I love. So reach out to me if you're interested in coaching, or you can check out some of my courses. They're all emotional intelligence based and they're online at stephaniepinto.com/courses. You'll actually find that most often 1 or 2 of them are actually on sale. So go and head over and check them out. All right, until next time, keep showing up and stay curious and lead with love and emotional intelligence. Bye, guys.